extremely excited because me and Michael, we're going to talk with you guys about who you are and how you can be a better leader. And everything is started with us. That's the journey. And Michael Christman is in the studio. He's a dear friend, is a guy that has a giving heart, helping other people's individuals, businesses, taking from the $500,000 to $10 million a company, coaching, a lot of other stuff. We're going to hear from Michael, but I promise you, you're going to love this podcast and you're going to learn a lot. But as you know, you have to do it. If you learn something, you got to execute. Michael, welcome to the show.
It's absolutely my pleasure to be here.
I am so happy that you are here. And, I can do a lot of more explanation about who you are, but I'm going to let you just tell us who is Michael Christman with all this expertise, the leadership, the coaching and everything. Yes, I personally admire your work and I admire your friendship.
I appreciate that. It's I take friendship seriously, and I try to be. I don't try to amass a lot of friends. I just try to be a really good friend to the right people, and I know what that means. So I am. I guess I'm a product of living long enough and paying a little bit of attention. You're bound to learn something along the way. So yep. My journey is filled with lessons that at some point, I learned about gratitude and the power of gratitude. And they say if you're paying attention at some point in your life, you begin to shift your attention more towards significance from success. Because you've been there, you've done that, you've achieved those things. We're always chasing the horizon, beyond the horizon, whatever the next thing is. Yep. That's been the story of my life. Sometimes when we achieve those things, we don't really know if we're fully worthy of that. We may get a little bit of imposter syndrome, whatever, but we rise to the next thing, and then off we go. And for me, I'm a combination. I'm just a guy who just kind of figured it out with the help of some people who were put in my life at the right time when I happened to be paying enough attention to acknowledge that I needed them. So I think there are people put in our lives all the time. Sometimes we miss it. I think there are lots more opportunities than there are problems. It's just that sometimes we're focused on the problems so much so that we don't see the opportunities. And so at some of the most unexpected times in my life, people came into them and then off we went in a direction together that became amazing. And so who am I? It's a hard one. I'm a guy who believes that we are all very, very blessed, and I believe that one person can make a difference. And I believe that sometimes the degree to which we can achieve things depends on how much permission we give ourselves. We can set goals here or we can set goals here. And it's kind of like we have to give ourselves permission maybe to think a little bigger.
These days, you and I, we talk about leadership a lot, and you have extensive experience with the leaders and leadership and the coaching and all of that. These days, everybody talking about leaders and how a person can be a better leader. I don't know what you think, but I think everything is started with us. And start with our thoughts, our mind, and then we can become a leader we want to be. It's not just as a magic pill or silver bullet that, hey, you take this, you do this, you're going to be a best leader. No. Can you a little bit emphasize on that and just explain for the viewers and audiences that what is the really definition of this leadership that everybody throwing around right now?
So I'm going to start with, we live in a world of likes, clicks,
absolutely,
and made you look.
Yep.
And people are exponentially trying and competing for our attention. So how in the world can you focus in the middle of all that noise?
Yeah.
So there's that. And our thoughts, I was blessed, as I said before, people come into my life at the right time. I met a man named Lou Tice who founded the Pacific Institute. He was an old football coach.
Amazing person.
Who came on to something about how people feel and think is directly related to how they perform. And they didn't get smarter about football. They didn't get better players. And suddenly they started winning state championships. And it was all thought-based. And he thought, maybe this would work in the business world. And he went on to do phenomenal things with prison rehabilitation, with the founding of Nordstrom, and he worked with Boeing and Microsoft. He was an amazing man. And somehow, at a party, because my wife's uncle was invited to this party and we were invited, I found myself in Lou's office with Lou, and he decided to mentor me. Now, I'm 44 years old at this point, and it was like a rebirth. And he only said one he was the king of positive self-talk. He wrote the first book on self-talk that I'm aware of, first book I'm interested in on that subject. And he said one negative thing to me. We're walking upstairs to do a vision building session. He said, "Kid, you don't think big enough."
Wow.
Now, I'm 44 years old. I've come from nothing. I'm at a pretty high level of success, I thought, at this point in time. And he's reminding me that I'm not giving myself permission to think big enough. And I'm thinking, okay, up we go. We sit there. He said, we all move toward and become that which we think about most, Michael. So why would we think about our troubles? Why would we expand those things in our minds? Why don't we learn how to think about a vision that we create that is so vivid in our minds and so joyful and warm when we think about it that we want to gravitate toward that? And so we went through some months of just hanging out together and me watching him work. And I went to his global conference. We're sitting there having, breakfast with people like Colin Powell and Earl Woods. And these are people who think way bigger than I did. And we talked to, there was a nuclear power plant that was about to be shut down because it was performing so poorly. And Lou Tice took his curriculum into this thing, and they went from worst to first in efficiencies and effectiveness. And all that happened was they focused on how they think and what they were focused on. So I thought, okay, there's power here. And it kind of overwhelmed me. It just rained down over me. And I spent a lot of time with Lou over the next decade. At the time, I was in management for a company called LifeTouch, which had, it was a big school picture company. It was the biggest one in the world at that time. But when I started with them, they were very small. And a lot of us started out of our garages and bedrooms. And so we grew, and we learned about leadership and management by the seat of our pants because nobody could teach us that. We didn't have a marketing department. We didn't have an HR department. We just listened to customers tell us what they would like, and we figured out how to do that profitably. The magic was in the simplicity of it.
Keep it simple.
And as we got bigger and bigger and bigger, really smart people would come in and try to complicate the whole thing. And every time that happened, we'd have a setback. It's like we always had to go back to the simplicity of it all. So leadership to me is people serving people. And when you really look at people, how we think determines how we roll and what we eventually become and anything we achieve. So I built this wheel. It's called a thought wheel. And it keeps fresh in my mind that it's always in motion. It's a wheel. It starts with our thoughts, and our thoughts shape our beliefs, our habits, and our attitudes. Wow. And if you think about it, people very rarely outperform their beliefs of what is possible. So we go from thoughts to beliefs to choices. Those beliefs shape our choices. We choose to do and say certain things which can't be undone. And those choices and actions have consequences and results, which are either good or bad or nothing. And then you create more thoughts from that. So you either affirm, if you're thinking negative thoughts and you go through the cycle and then negative happens, you kind of double down on negative. And so that wheel is constantly moving, right? And it can either become a downward spiral where, oh, I knew I was going to fail that test. And I did, right? Or guess what? I'm going to shoot a great golf score today. And I can see it. I'm going to do it shot by shot. And then you have a good score. And now that's what you think about.
But being a positive is an enforcement. My question is that the specific, time, how about being realistic? What do you think about that?
I think about that a lot. As a matter of fact, I came up with a name for myself when people want to ask me and label me, ask me, kind of who am I? How do I think? I'm a pragmatic optimist. I believe in positive outcomes, and I'm fully aware. When I used to race dirt track, I was fully aware there was a big rut in turn 3. If you hit it, it's going to spin you out or flip you over. I would walk through the pits, and what was interesting, time after time, there was always a rut somewhere. There was always a problem somewhere when we were racing. What was interesting to me is the people who found themselves in the front at the end of the day weren't the people talking about the rut. They were the people talking about how to run a higher groove where there were no ruts. They were going to set the car up. They were thinking about what can we do that will bring us a specific outcome that we desire. They were not thinking about and talking about the problem. They acknowledged the problem and moved right to the solution. And I found in business when we, employees would bring problems. I was out there today and this happened. What should we do? I don't know. You were there. You saw, take the temperature of the client. What happened? How could we fix it? What do you think? And they would look at me like, I don't know. I want you to tell me. You're the boss. I said, yeah, you're not ready to have this discussion. So I had enough of that we put a piece of duct tape across the carpet at my doorway. And even if the door was open, you weren't allowed to cross that duct tape unless you had the problem, 3 solutions, and the one you picked and why. Until that time, you weren't ready to discuss it.
Basically, by empowering your people, you're empowering yourself, right?
I required them to think and offer up a solution. And then we would collaborate on what we thought was a good one. And we would all learn together. So again, we didn't have anybody teaching us how to lead and how to do these things. We kept trying stuff. I mean, I read about that tactic when I was reading about Napoleon. And
yep.
If you came into Napoleon's tent and said, we're going to be surrounded by morning and the people are starving, our troops are starving to death and they're frozen, they're tired. If you came into his tent and said that and you didn't offer a solution, he might shoot you. You needed to be a solution thinker. And so if you study all the great leaders, they're results focused, they're solution thinkers. They help those around them rise. Sometimes you need to be about command and control. At the end of the day, over time, when you get old like me, you've witnessed how much more powerful influence is than control. You've witnessed how much more powerful a want-to culture is than a have-to culture. It's in an amazing culture, everything seems to be, the energy is all focused on what's right for the employee, what's right for the customer, what's ethically right for the world. In a toxic culture, it's about who's right. if you find yourself in a culture where it's really, really important who's right all the time, then you probably should look for an exit if you want to have a happy life.
This is what I see right now. Maybe you see it, you have seen it before. One of the things that these leaders, or whoever is leading the corporation, small team, a small group, they're not vulnerable. And I think vulnerability is the key to success of any leaders, because if you're not vulnerable, how could you grow? If you can't raise your hand and say, I don't know this, give me, as you said, give me a solution, how that's going to work? Because I don't know it all. I ask my staff sometimes that, guys, do you have any idea how we can do this? Or I can say, hey, no, this is so embarrassing. The vulnerability, what is your take on that with your experience dealing with all this leader? The vulnerability is something that they should consider?
Vulnerability is a very powerful thing, and I don't think it comes easy.
It's not.
When you ask who I am, I really didn't know how to answer that question. But I'm a guy who, I was playing rock and roll music to earn my way through college. We thought maybe we had something. We were writing songs. Things were going really well. And then my son was born, and I had mouths to feed. And I wanted to be a photographer. I was stubborn about it. So I said, I'm going to have a career in photography. Didn't know how, scared to death, trying to take care of a family. That fear and insecurity creates kind of you manufacture an artificial swag, right? Which by some is perceived as arrogance, by others perceived as confidence. It's really just something you put on to cover up your fear. So to me, vulnerability takes great courage, because over time you've manufactured this Teflon persona. You've got Kevlar, you're bulletproof. Here's my next swag step I'm going to take. And you're trying to live up to that at all times. It's a lot of pressure. And then to be vulnerable to the people you're trying to lead, you might perceive that as weakness.
Most of us.
And so I started out of my garage. I didn't have any customers. The guy who had all the business was extremely arrogant and rude to me, enough so that I put his business card on my mirror that had his picture on it. And I shaved with him every morning for 15 years and winked at him as I left the bathroom and said, David, I'll be kicking your butt again today. And that's how I built my business. If he hadn't been so rude to me, I might not have had that vigor. And so that was a thing that happened. As I just wanted one customer. That was my goal. Get one customer, do such a good job that they'll talk about you and you'll get another one. And then it turned into a careful what you wish for scenario, because I was my only employee. And we started getting a lot of attention and a lot of customers really quickly. And I had no clue how to hire, lead, or manage. So what's your go-to? You hire people and you say, do this exactly the way I do it, and we'll be fine. So you're trying to clone yourself, which is literally limiting and masking any talents that these folks might be bringing in that you don't have. They can never rise. You're just trying to create a discipline, right? And so in as much as in our world of school pictures, you needed very disciplined process and procedure, you also needed innovative and creative personalities around you. And early on, I wasn't fostering that until I got so big that I really needed to go run this part of the business, and I needed somebody to run the photography. By now, we had about 30 photographers that were out every day, and we needed somebody. And I found a young woman that was amazing with the workforce. And I created what in our industry was kind of the first operations manager. And she just did everything that was execution. And I turned my attention to sales and management. And that's when the business really took off. And I not at first it was me kind of allowing her to be her and do it her way. And then it was like, oh my, she is so much better at that than I am, and so good. And I'm so blessed to have her. And so then, you look at it 35 years later, she's the sister I never had. She's the godmother of my daughter. She's just a special human being. And what it took was me to see something, and I had to grow in to being able to see. She saw things in other people that I didn't see.
I'm so happy you mentioned that relationships, but I always say that the most important assets of any organization are their people, like the people that can make you or break you. I am personally nobody without my people in my company. I can't do everything, but unfortunately, some companies, they neglect and they don't understand the power of people in their organization. By winning the heart of their people, the organization actually will grow faster. And I'm sure you have seen that in your, coaching and all that stuff that with many people. This is something that I don't know when we're going to get that. When our leaders are going to get that.
Well, the things you mentioned, like vulnerability and culture and leadership, I mean, those are powerful things. Had I not met this woman at the time I met her and brought her into my business and into my life, the vulnerability, the courage to be vulnerable would not have happened.
Yep.
She did that for me. And then I became vulnerable and I became a better leader. She hired people that I didn't see past what I was looking at, and she did. And they went on to become these amazing characters in our company. And so I give her she was a milestone for me. She was one of those points of inflection where I got better because of her. And the realization of that did something inside of me that made me different and better, made me want to be better. So as a leader, you have to be constantly, I think as a leader, you have to be constantly self-aware, extremely self-aware. Here are the parts of me that are working really well. I can see it. I can see the results of it. Here are the parts of me that I trip over and I would love to improve. Here are the parts of me that I even have trouble acknowledging to myself that I have these weaknesses, right? I don't like these things about myself. And if you're aware of all of that and how it plays out in your daily behavior, I mean, keeping in mind that, we could go on and on about this, but all these different personality types, I don't care whether you're doing Myers-Briggs or DISC or, if you do Roger Hamilton's work on talent dynamics, he's got these 8 places around a square, and if you've got key people in your organization and one of them's up here in this corner and one of them rolls down here in this corner, this person can't be around this person. This person uses way too many words for this person. Just give me the facts and leave me alone. And this person's like, oh, let's talk, blah, blah, blah. And so understanding how talent dynamics works and learning to appreciate each other, not in spite of, because of our differences. Now diversity comes in, not just the kind of diversity people talk about, the kind of thought diversity that we're after. That's where the magic is. Collaboration is a dying art, I think, in our world, where people can disagree productively, and instead of either my way or your way, it's not either or, it's and. And is always the magic word because there's more in it. There's magic.
It's one word.
When we start using, language is a whole other subject.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
We change but to and. We change if to when.
So powerful.
And it changes everything in the way we talk to ourselves, the way we speak with others, and back to the thought wheel. how we talk to ourselves determines how we think. But determines how we believe.
Right now, I have seen it with all these, layoffs recently, the artificial intelligence, all this news that you hear, that most of the companies, most of the leaders, they're looking at their people as numbers. This is what bothers me. Like, they're not looking at them as a human being that might go through some stuff that for you, instead, go and tell them, hey, Michael, I am sorry you didn't make your numbers for this quarter. I'm going to have to let you go. Or they ask Michael, what's going on? How is everything with the family?
There you
How is
go.
everything with your wife? Is she
There you
feeling
go.
better? I know that you didn't, do very well, but I'm sure something happened. You didn't do that. Where is that? This is my frustration. They don't see it. They don't want to believe it, from the politics to the corporation. What the heck is happening?
So in the coaching world or business advisory world, once I left LifeTouch, I was in senior management for LifeTouch, and there's a whole other story about why I chose to leave at that time. I got to live through a culture that was naturally built from garages and bedrooms around the country. One person falls down, 9 hands reach down to pick them up. Nobody asks what's in it for me. It was real. It was not manufactured by leadership. The leader was this guy who hired me in his basement when I was 22. He later was the chairman. He changed the entire industry. The man never said I or me in 40 years of leadership. After the executive planning was all put to bed and all the committee members and all the executive officers were in a room at a dinner, he would thank everyone for their hard work and tell them how wonderful he thought we were doing. And then he would remind everyone, now, nobody in here took any pictures or sold anything today. Not to belittle your job, we have one job, and that is to support the people who do take pictures and sell things. We have one job, and that is to support our field organization. If we ever get that wrong, we'll be in deep trouble. When he retired, that's the last time that speech was ever given.
Wow.
He and I were friends by that time, and we had a lunch, and I interviewed him because I thought he was the greatest leader I'd ever been close to. And he said, some of my biggest headaches were my best teachers, and you were one of them. And I thought about that for a second. In the back of my mind, I was thinking, yeah, and under today's leadership, the headaches get fired immediately because they disagreed. So we had shifted to making the business from being about people and the people we serve to being about money. And I remember Mr. Erickson always said to me, don't waste the money, take care of the money. We will always have money when we take care of the people who work here and the people they serve. We will always have money. And so those are axioms. And what you described is the absence of those axioms. It is clearly why I do what I do. I've seen the beauty and the power in a culture like that. The culture, you can measure a culture by how people feel on Sunday night about going to work Monday morning. Yep. They're either dreading it or they're excited. You can walk into a room and listen to the conversations, and you can tell if you are in a positive culture. And you don't make a positive culture by having draft beer and a ping pong table.
No.
Nice to haves, but that's not a culture. A culture is how people feel, and how people feel is directly relevant to how they perform. That's not new news. That goes back to Plato. That's real. And yet, how do you, getting somebody to pay somebody to come in and work on the culture is kind of like hiring somebody to find a rattle in your car. I mean, nobody knows where to start. a CFO can't figure out how to value that service, right? I can tell you, we went, in my tenure at LifeTouch with that culture, we went from $10 million annual sales to $1.4 billion, and being the world leader in North America, the leader in North America at what we do. That culture did that.
Yes.
And so there were other people who did what we do, probably as well as we do. They didn't have that culture. They had an us and them chasm between labor and management. And the chasm didn't have a bridge that was effective. And so at some point, we began to acquire the companies that couldn't rise to our level, and we got even bigger. And the culture was taken for granted. And things that are taken for granted sometimes erode. So what you described to me in companies who see people as numbers, right? I mean, think about it. Jack Welch wrote a book. In the books that Jack wrote, he changed his mind over time. He'd write one and then, maybe we'll do it.
Yeah.
And in the world of catchphrases and buzzwords that everybody likes to do in leadership speak, right? Who was it? Marshall Goldsmith said, "What got us here won't get us there." Well, if you don't read the whole book, I mean, all that meant was we need change. We need to change things. We can't keep doing things the way we always have. Fair point.
But, people are making this very complicated.
Very complicated. But if you stick with just what got us here won't get us there, you will throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you'll try to change everything. And you'll change some of the holy grail, and you'll kill the culture. It's when, in a healthy culture, you don't see a lot of blame.
Yeah,
right.
No blame.
In a toxic culture, you see people worried about who's right, who gets the credit, and who's at fault. Who's the next fall guy? And by the way, we're going to lay off our bottom 5%.
Yeah.
Right? At our company, our bottom 5% was better than the top 5% at a lot of companies. You can't just blatantly lay off your bottom 5%.
No, and this is Michael. I have seen it that there's some leaders or CEOs or corporate people in the top level. They say, "Okay, we need to fix our culture." They bring this consultant, the coaches, and everything else, but they take themselves out of the equation, which I know the problem comes from them.
Right. Well, that's okay. So now you're to the part where a guy like me could get fired on the second day.
Yes.
Because I was hired to tell the truth, I thought, right? And you always include assessing the leadership in assessing the company.
And how would you interact with that leader that Michael goes there? I said, "I can't do my job if I don't know who you are."
Well, in the initial consult with me, we talk about we start at the top and we work through the organization. We start with the end vision in mind, and we do a brutally honest assessment. We call it the GBU, the good, bad, and the ugly of the current reality. Now, when we can really have an amazing vision, a visual that we can lock onto, and we believe is so good, the why is so big. Why becomes the fuel, right? So we're going to build the rocket, and the why, the size of the why determines the depth of the commitment. And so the why is important. What are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do it? What does it look like? How does it feel? Boom. We lock that all down. Now we go back to the current reality where everybody's stuck. This noisy, crazy current reality where everybody's trying to paint a train while it's moving and it's chaos, and they bring in a consultant. And we want you to help us do X or solve X or increase profitability. They really would like me to increase profitability by my very presence. And to do that, I have to understand so much. And how did we get where we're at?
Or communication.
So the good, bad, and the ugly is usually a stall out point. It's people are not
open to
embracing honesty about their own personal flaws. They don't, and if the culture's toxic, it's not a safe thing to do, to admit your flaws. It's, I love working with folks who just give us carte blanche and we say, okay, everybody in the organization is going to have an IDP, an individual development plan. It's one page. We're going to list our 5 greatest strengths that create the foundation of why we're good and why we belong in our job. Then we're going to list 2 things that when we improve those 2 things, we're going to be exponentially better. Every single person, from the CEO all the way to the janitor, we're going to have something that we aspire. This is how we help people rise. We support their growth. It's not an event like a once-a-year performance review where I tell you where your failings are and why you're not getting a bigger raise. This is not that. This is just somebody caring about another person and helping them rise. This is a seed planted that turns into personal accountability because people want to rise. People want to know that they're appreciated. People want to know that they're important. People want to know that they're relevant. People want to be rewarded for their efforts. They want to know that they have a future path that is somehow different than today and somehow better, right? So you look at what people want. If you've built your company in such a way that these folks over here are just putting lug nuts on Fords, and some union is going to grind me for how much I pay them, and I'm going to begrudge that, how will we ever get to know our people? How will we ever appreciate them at a level, right? I mean, this has evolved pretty far down the road. So
yes.
The work that I do, I don't work with that. I can't fix that. I can't help that. I'm not that person. I'm a person who can help a leader rise and build something pretty special. And I know that in my small world, we've had great success with that. And I feel like that's making a difference. I think we all throw a ripple, we throw a pebble in the pond and we create a ripple.
Yes.
And it goes far and it touches many. When it touches people in the right way, they throw their pebble and their ripple goes. So, at my station in life, I believe very deeply in the pebble I'm throwing and the ripple it's creating. I want to touch as many people as I can touch. I believe in a just right world. And in a just right world, people care more about what's right than who's right. In a just right world, people are kind to one another.
Yes.
And I believe that to achieve progress toward that, we need leaders.
We need
leaders the likes of which we don't have today. We need to grow some exceptional leaders. We have some. I don't see them in politics.
No.
We do have some. And those leaders walk their values. They know their values. Their values are not situational or circumstantial. They are rock solid. And they walk their values even when it's not convenient. They walk their values even when it's not profitable. You say that and it sounds like an idealist.
And they do what they preach.
They do what they preach. When I said not profitable, they walk their values even when it's not profitable. In a publicly owned company, that can get you fired pretty quickly.
Yep. Very fast.
So they're also pragmatic optimists. They understand the next move they need to make to get to the better move, even if that move is maybe hard for them to swallow. They draw a line somewhere that says, ethically, I will not cross this. I will leave and gladly lose my job, before I cross this line.
I had a discussion with one of the leaders that I said, "Why did you take this job?" And he said, "I don't know. I always want to be a leader." And that kind of shook me. I said, "What?" So yeah, I always want to be in that position to lead. I said, "But before you do that, you have to understand who you are as an individual. How are you going to do that? Because I believe if you don't know who you are, how are you going to be who you want to be? Or what you're going to do?" What is your take on that? I know you've been talking about that. Me and you, we talk about that, about self-awareness. So self-awareness is everything.
I have this process that I use, and it's like a circle game. In this circle, this is the new vision. This is what it looks like when it's just right.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like right now. Current reality, noisy, crazy. And then we start, once we have those things, we have a gap, we measure it, we move. It's called discovery, roadmap, execution. The very first step is to lock away the noise from right now and create this new vision. Sometimes you have to get somewhere quiet. You do it with eyes closed, and you try to see your future. That's, to answer your question, is like, I run into leaders you would recognize their name. These are big-time leaders who know so much more about what's wrong and what they want to fix than they know about what it would look like if it was just right. They're just right. They've only gone as far as a spreadsheet. They've got 5-year goals. They've got 3-year goals. Yep. They've got 1-year goals. Most of it fits on a spreadsheet. Most of it involves profit and head count and market coverage. And, right? I want to know what it looks like, what it feels like to be here 5 years from now in your mind. I want to know how you feel, how much time you have with your family. What's your family 5 years from now? How old are your children? How old's your mom and dad? How old's your dog 5 years from now? And to do that is kind of jarring. It's kind of like, wow, okay. And the older I get, when I do the long-term goal, it's kind of like, well, how far out do I dare go now, right? How far out am I allowing myself to think? It doesn't really matter. What matters is when you back into right now, wherever the gap is, it's how do we spend the right amount of time celebrating what I call the eternal now? I think the past is really good for lessons learned and great memories.
Absolutely.
And that's about all the time we ought to spend there.
And most of the people, they spend time in the past.
Yeah, well, no grudges, no past pain. That's not healthy for what I'm talking about. So the past is good for lessons and great memories. And recently I've had a lot of loss in my family, and
I know you told me
I've got some amazing memories that I go to for strength and comfort. So I'm not sure what percentage of my time I spend there, but it's not a lot of time. I'm very clear about things that are important to me for the future and important to my family, and what my impact is going to be on the world when I'm gone. I'm getting weird about that. I think about that a lot. And so however much time I spend thinking about that and clarifying that, and however much time I spend reflecting, that in my opinion, that can't be more than 20% of my time. 80% of my time needs to be spent in the perpetual now, being grateful and maximizing every hour I do have, because nobody knows how much time we have. Yes. So one of my little workshops we do, it's called Precious Tokens. And each hour, 168 a week, you get this bag every week of 168 tokens. And we hope we get all the way through the week and we get to spend all our tokens. And most people know a lot more about how they spend and manage their money than they do about how they spend and manage their time. And so we do some interesting work around asking people how they think they spend their time. And we ask them what's important to them, how they spend their time, and do they spend their time on what matters most to them? And we get a lot of good dialogue. I had one Fortune 500 CEO tell me how many hours a week he spends with his family, how many hours a week he spends with his direct reports, how many hours a week in meetings, how many hours a week in airports, he totaled up all of his hours, and he came up with 234 hours a week. It was magic, because I had to tell him that there's only 168 for most of us. How did he get 234? And so here's a person you would think would know about those things, and they had no clue. So we tracked for 2 weeks, every hour, how he spent it. Grown man runs a big company in tears at that session because he was cheating his family and himself horribly. And in his mind, he had masked that. It was a great exercise. And when you go through precious tokens, you will never think about time in the same way.
Because time is really precious. And I always say that you really, really don't know when your time is up.
Nobody
you really
does.
don't know. I cannot guarantee today after this, conversation, am I going to be alive or not? I can't guarantee that.
Nobody can.
What I have is now. And unfortunately, most of us, they think they're going to live forever. And I always say that just do the right thing, help people, lift people up, create something new, give back as you want to receive, and everything is going to be okay. And
right.
this is a legacy. How you see legacy as?
To me, it kind of means how will you be remembered, right? I mean,
how you want people to remember Michael?
Yeah, and so
tough question.
It is, because the God's truth is, in most cases, you won't be remembered that much. If you wouldn't worry so much about what people think of you if you knew how little they did. I mean, it's so
but do you think
we're
legacy
a little more important in our own mind sometimes?
But I think legacy is now. I always believe our legacy is now. After I die, I totally understand what you people, they're going to cry for a week, and they all go back to their lives. And what you're going to get, God rest his soul, he was a great guy and everything else. But what we do right now, that counts. What we do. I think that's the new definition of legacy, is now, what we do right now. I believe that.
To me, I want to do what's right. I want to help people rise. I want to be a lot of things that in the course of my life, I wasn't the best at. I want to be really good at it now. Humility is not anything that I was ever accused of on the way up. Nobody knew how afraid I was on the inside, and all of that swag I manufactured was to cover up my insecurity and fear. You weren't going to, I only recently even admitted that. So it's like the swagility thing. It's like just enough swag to be noticed and enough humility to be trusted. I want that. I want people, I believe I have things to share that are helpful to people, and yes, I believe it because I've seen it. And so in an effort to be humble, in a world where self-promotion seems to be all there is, that's kind of a conflict, right? It's everywhere you look, everybody's promoting themselves as this or that. You don't even know what to believe. I mean, are they really a subject matter expert? I don't know. They say they are on LinkedIn. And so, they have a really good digital marketing program. They must be all that in a bag of chips.
Yep.
Or maybe not. How many great leadership books have been written by great authors who never led anything? And it doesn't mean that what's in their book is not accurate or valid. It's just a point of order that maybe there are people out there who don't have fame or notoriety who are extremely valuable mentors to others. And I tend to be drawn to those folks.
My whole show is, I believe that everyone has a story. And regardless of if you are a CEO, you are a chairman, you are a carpenter, whoever you are, you got a story that you haven't discussed it with anybody. You didn't talk about it, the suffering, the pain, the suffering, happiness, what you went through. If you talk about that, you never know, you might help one person by hearing that. That's my goal. That's my goal with this talk show, that, okay, what is your story? Because I believe we all have a story. We all have it. You have it, I have it, and we all have our regrets. And my regrets, I don't want to have any regrets why I didn't say that, why I didn't talk about that. Do you have any regrets?
If logistically, if you look at the word regret, as if I went back, I would do that differently. To me, that would be a regret. And I can think of some times that definitely I would. And yet, what transpired led me to right here, right now. And I am blessed beyond my wildest dreams with an amazing wife and a wonderful family and some things that I have that I can share that are going to help people be crazy successful and happy and peaceful and joyful all at the same time. I have the ability to do that now. So if I go back and reprogram what I regret, I wouldn't have the lessons from that, and I might not have all of the gifts I have today. So I don't know that. Here's what I would do more of at a younger age. I would have a daily routine and start with a gratitude prayer and physical exercise every day when I was younger. I would not chase things relentlessly that I thought were going to somehow get away from me. I would be more peaceful in my approach to business and to relationships. The younger me, if I were talking to a younger version of me, I would say, listen more than you speak. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. And, I don't know if I'll ever get that part right, but I'm better than I used to be. When I was in kindergarten, the teacher wrote a letter to my mother and said, your child is a good child. He's a good student. He talks way too much, and we need to have a conversation about how to limit his conversation. My mother went in and met with the teacher, and she told that teacher, well, he has a lot to say. And apparently she was right, because I haven't shut up since. And so I've learned to talk for a living.
I can tell you that, you always shine, and you're still shining, and you will shine more and help so many other people. And I can talk to you all day about this, about the culture, leadership, being who we are and all that stuff. I just want to say thank you for being here, accept my invitation, and I look forward for our next conversation. I know we have a lot to do and talk about a lot of stuff, and it's very interesting, and it's going to be very helpful to listeners and viewers. Thank you, Micah, for being here. I greatly appreciate it.
Like I said, I'm honored. I'm honored to be your friend, and I'm honored to be here. So
thank you.